How many good games has Jackson Smith and Jigba had? One?
No, he's got more than that usable. He's been a wide receiver 3 or 4 at least 5 times.
Oh, great. A wide receiver 4.
Again, that's his ceiling.
That sounds like my team didn't make the playoffs.
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Week 15, first round of the Fantasy Playoff player rankings by position. You want the position, you hit the time codes, jump around. All the rankings down in the description as well. And there are 2 Listeners Leagues on DraftKings this week. One for the Saturday only slate, one for the Sunday only slate. So, play them both. How about that? Let's get them filled very quickly. In the week, only 1,000 spots in the Saturday-only slate, so those spots are going to be at a premium. So I suggest that you go reserve your spot right now, okay? Additionally, runthesims.com, where you can make your own projections, but you can also get the Prop Sniper, all the daily fantasy tools, whatever package that you want that fits your needs, you can do code MAYO. Will get you 10% off all of that right now. Jake Ciely from theathletic.com on the line. Sir, you're the new Andercust.
I'm the new Andercust. I don't know which threw you off more, the fact that I wasn't wearing a fun t-shirt or the fact that I just destroyed the Texans' hopes and dreams within 10 days of saying I don't want anything to do with the Giants until things are changed there. And then, let's go Texans. I mean, look here. Got my Texans hat. And then within 10 days, I've hurt the starting quarterback, the top 2 wide receivers, and their playoff hopes.
Hey, their tight end isn't playing either. Don't sell yourself short here.
Dalton Schultz, yeah. Might as well throw him into the mix.
All right, well, let's get into it because there's a lot of critical decisions to be made. I expect the next 3 weeks to be our 3 lowest downloaded and lowest viewed shows of the season because people are now out of their fantasy playoffs. Hopefully not so much. They've been watching this show because I feel like we've been doing pretty well so far this season. So smash the like, sub to the channel while you're here. We'll hit the injury report, which you can always find in the Mayo Media newsletter. Completely free. That link is down in the description right now as well, along with all of the links to the rankings up on DraftKings Network. A.J. Dillon will play on Monday Night Football. Aaron Jones is not likely to play on Monday Night Football, so it looks like he's getting closer. I still didn't include him in the rankings because, as I told you the past 2 weeks, I am not including him in the rankings until he actually plays, so there's one. Josh Jacobs exited the game with a knee injury. I do not have him in the rankings. Alexander Mattison exited with an ankle injury in that same game. I do not have him in the rankings either. No Ramondre Stevenson, no Isaiah Pacheco, no Jonathan Taylor, although he could potentially return this week. Again, I'll update the rankings to adjust for that. Elijah Mitchell did not play. We don't really care about him. And Brian Robinson, coming off of the bye, had a hamstring injury. I do have him in, but keep an eye on his status as the week goes along to see if he's actually going to be in or not. And we can talk through some of these scenarios to figure out what people should do with their fantasy lineups this week. DeMarcado is coming off the bye as well. So the rankings for the week: Christian McCaffrey is number 1, Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams number 3, Kamara Achane, Rashad White, Austin Eckler, Bijan Robinson, Raheem Mostert, Tony Pollard. There's the top 10. Then we got David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, Javonte Williams, Ezekiel Elliott with no Ramondre Stevenson, Breece Hall, Ty Chandler with no Alexander Mattison, Ponzi scheme, Zach Moss, then Brian Robinson, James Conner, Derrick Henry, Jerick McKinnon, and Kenneth Walker. That is my top 25. Then we got lingerers like DeAndre Swift, Jerome Ford, Chuba Hubbard, who gets all the volume and does nothing with it. He's basically Zach Moss at this point. A.J. Dillon and Keaton Mitchell, who got the lead work. It just didn't materialize into anything against the Rams this week.
Yeah, if you probably heard me laugh. Ponzi. I sat there on All in Football this morning and I said, Pat, man, I did the same thing I told people not to do. But we did see Zach Moss for 4 straight weeks look terrific in RB1. But how long for years did we sit here and I said, Zach Moss he's not that good. He's replacement level running back. And people wanted to happen with the Bills. And it didn't happen. People just kept clamoring for Zach Moss every time he got a chance. And then, for 4 weeks this year, I'm like, well, I can't deny how good he looked. It's volume. Made an apology. We sat on your show, sat on my show, sat on all the shows I did last week and said 20 carries, Zach Moss. I'm going to buy in again. And it was a mistake. It should have gone with what we always say, Pat. You know what the problem is? You're not any good.
He's getting he scored both of the last 2 weeks and both touchdowns got called back. I think he has double-digit carries inside of the 5-yard line,
yes,
the 10-yard line. combined each of the past 2 weeks. So the volume is still there. It's going to happen because, we've seen crappy running backs backdoor their way into 3 touchdown games just because they continuously get the volume and things break their way. So maybe this is the week against the Steelers. Who knows? But I wouldn't be banking my week on that. He's still a play, though, if there's no Jonathan Taylor. He has to be.
But he's still an RB2. And where you have him is the fact that, like, he's in there in the conversation of you have Ty Chandler with no Alexander Madison, but, I would play Zach Moss over Ty Chandler, even with that potential workload. I would play him over Zamir White with.
There we go. Well, I'll make that change immediately.
Ty Chandler?
We'll go. I mean, I have Zamir White down at 31. You want to talk about someone I don't think is good? I don't think Zamir White is good.
No, in my waiver column for tonight, I wrote up and said, let's remember Joshua Kelly when he's been given the lead. And that's what I would compare him to. Actually, I said Zamir White's kind of like Kenyon Drake tendencies for me, but he's not even Kenyon Drake. So we have seen nothing in the NFL to say Zamir White should do better. A volume play, but that's why I think where you have him is a fair spot. Honestly, I'd play him behind Jaylen Warren because the passing game upside is where you want for the Steelers in this matchup. And I know you're looking for an excuse for me to tell you to put Jaylen Warren higher, so I knew you would take that immediately.
Easy.
To your point, though, the past 2 weeks, it's funny. Kyron Williams, Zach Moss, 7 goal-to-go rush attempts, 4 goal line rush attempts. The only running back who has more than them, 9 and 8. 8 goal line rushes inside the 5 for Joe Mixon over the last 2 weeks.
I can see it. I have Mixon up at number 14 right now. I could probably boost him up even higher, potentially. I think he's a great low-end 1, high-end 2, but he's not in a spot where you're not going to play him at this point.
No.
Do I have Austin Eckler overranked in this matchup against the Raiders, knowing that there's no Justin Herbert? It's going to be Easton Stick. He finally got himself into the end zone.
That's the issue.
Do you think I should be dropping him down?
And look, I sat on seriously, pulled the clip. I even sat there and said, like, I don't buy this whole coach speak of this is, we've seen this before, and then they go right back to their stars. Now, that clip, I'm even saying, like, it looked wrong in the first half. Like, the first half was like, oh God, they are fully going with Isaiah Spiller and Joshua Kelly. But I don't know if Staley was doing that to show to everyone that they're not Austin Eckler or whatever it was, because what happened? Third quarter, mostly Austin Eckler. Fourth quarter, all Austin Eckler, and he was, as of right now, a top 6 running back. I would have him in the RB1 conversation, but this week specifically because of Easton Stick, I would put him with the Giants this week in New Orleans. I'd have him in the Barkley conversation, so 1 spot behind Mixon, but I would have Tony Pollard much lower. Tony Pollard's in a full timeshare now.
All right, so how far down? I had Pollard at 9. How far down do you want to put him? Would you put him behind Javonte Williams?
That's the name I was looking at. What do we got for Denver? In Detroit? You know what? I think if it was my team, there might be people that actually have to make this decision. So Javonte Williams, I would play Zeke against Kansas City. I couldn't stomach sitting him for Zeke, even though we just saw him get all that work, and it's against Kansas City. It could go either way. You could be like, oh, he gets the passing game work, so what's to be concerned? They released Ty Montgomery. But I just don't trust the Patriots offense. I don't trust Bailey Zappi. And I don't trust Belichick. I don't trust the fact that he's not going to involve somebody else randomly in the passing game.
So stick him 1 spot ahead of Zeke then? Pollard behind Javonte Williams? All right. I can get on board with
Daddle's
that.
got like 45% of the work, and he's getting all the goal line carries.
He is, and Detroit's defense.
Past 2 weeks.
Detroit's defense stinks, by the way.
Which is why I don't want to push Pollard down too far.
Yeah, but Javonte is at 15 against Detroit is a pretty nice spot.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry, like why Pollard, but like behind Williams. Sorry, my brain was kind of like steps ahead of the conversation. It's like why I want to keep Williams ahead of him, but not push down Pollard too far. So there you go.
Yeah, it's funny because I have Zeke ahead of Breece Hall, only because
I'm okay with that.
Breece Hall's basically what Zeke did on Thursday night against the Steelers is essentially what you're trying to get at a Breece Hall right now because he's not doing anything on the ground.
No, and that's the biggest thing is then Dalvin Cook got the start, and Dalvin Cook, like, it wasn't a true start, but it was enough of the share to say that, hey, this is a split too. Like you just mentioned, his receiving game has been better. His receiving game was far better. So if that doesn't happen, you have a major concern. So against Miami, that's the good thing is that they should be passing, but it's also the Jets offense.
I have Jarek at number 24. And where the hell do I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire at number 39? I do think that the split is that pronounced. Now, maybe Clyde can find himself into the end zone twice with goal line carries, but when Kansas City's offense is working at its best and Pacheco is not there, Jarek is the one who is funneling all of this stuff. He has all the passing game work, and it's almost like it was a season ago, all of a sudden again, where when they're scoring touchdowns inside the 10-yard line, it's just little dump-offs to Jarek. He's the guy who's in there.
And that's what I brought up when people were asking who to pick up. I'm with you. McKinnon over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I'm looking right now, the snap percentage was 48 for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 45 for McKinnon. But the offense works better. And if they do run the ball, they still use McKinnon. Anyway, that's the biggest thing. So he's the more likely one to get the touchdown, which is why in waivers, I would if they're still out there in a lot of leagues, and a lot of it just might be people are done and not paying attention, but I would still take McKinnon over Edwards-Helaire. Even in this game where, maybe they can get up and use Edwards-Helaire more, but I don't even care because the thing is if Pacheco comes back, McKinnon's still usable. If Pacheco comes back, Edwards-Helaire is non-existent.
Yeah, so I don't think that Pacheco is going to come back because it sounded like the injured reserve isn't out of the question for him. They might just put him on ice until the playoffs at this point because how far up in the AFC are they really going to move? They could, obviously, because they have some of the tie breaks with both Baltimore and with Miami, but they still need to catch up games in that department. And as long as they can just stay ahead of Denver, they're pretty good to go in the AFC West. So you might as well try to get everything right going into the playoffs because it does seem like the 1 seed is probably not out of the question, but very unlikely at this point. So it's probably going to be Jarek. But if Pacheco does play, where would you have him against the Patriots? Like in the Zach Moss range, like Brees Hall, Zeke, probably.
Yeah, I would play him over Zach.
Yeah.
And Chandler.
Yeah, I think he's right there, though.
I would go over Brees Hall, too, because here's what I always go back to. We've had this conversation for years, for however long we've been doing it, is when teams have usable options that are performing well and they bring back a questionable player, like Pacheco. This would be questionable. They don't need him to play this week. You just brought it up. There was an original talk in the middle of last week that IR was a possibility. And then Sunday rolled around and they're like, yeah, we're probably not going to do the IR. It doesn't sound like it should be a severe injury that's definitely needing 4 weeks. But you brought it up. There's like this uncertainty of like, do they want to push it? If they bring him back, that tells me he's ready because you just brought up the point. Like, why bring him back? Why bring him back when McKinnon and Edwards-Helaire work? They work. They're not Pacheco on his own, but they work. So if he comes back, that tells me they're ready to use him. So I would use Pacheco over Brees Hall. I'd probably put him right there with Zeke just because of a little bit of a risk that maybe he gets 55% versus a 65%. But I would trust that they're not bringing him back with, you just laid out all the scenarios why they don't need to. And their schedule, I mean, they honestly on paper should win out for your point about that. So I would put him 18 right in front of Brees Hall.
Yeah, and it would just dump Jarek. Jarek would go from 24 to like 40, and Edwards-Helaire would go from 39 to 70 or something like that. That's sort of like
don't even rank them.
Yeah, everyone just kind of gets knocked down a bunch of pegs in that scenario. The few other ones, let's talk about Jonathan Taylor. Should Jonathan Taylor return? Obviously, you'd want to play him over Zach Moss, but could you see it being a little bit like it was the first few weeks that Taylor came back from the holdout, where it's closer to 50-50 than all Taylor all the time? Or because of how ineffective that Zach Moss has been inside the goal line, where Jonathan Taylor's been very good inside the 10 so far this season, that all of a sudden he's like a top 12 option, like he's in the Mixon range?
No, I think, again, we saw the 4 weeks. We saw the 5th game where they were still splitting. I would think that they lost a little bit of faith the past 2 weeks, but also this is now multiple times Jonathan Taylor's been hurt, and it's worked with both of them. They've had really great games with both of them. Gardner Minshew is, obviously, they still have playoff hopes alive, and you don't want Gardner Minshew doing it all himself because it's basically another version of Jameis. You might get a great game. You might get a losable game. So, looking at your ranks, Tony Pollard is where I would stop. I think he would be in a split similar to Tony Pollard, maybe a little bit more in a share, so I would put him over Tony, but I wouldn't put him over Saquon Barkley just for that risk that you're bringing up that, it's not the full workload. Zach Moss does steal some, and if Zach Moss steals some, he also sometimes steals some at the goal line, so that's why I would stop right at Barkley.
Yeah, and Zach Moss would fall outside the top 30 in this scenario for me. He'd be a very low-end flex running back 3 type of running back. Brian Robinson I have in.
I was just looking. I was gonna say, like, I would actually, for your point, I would consider having a discussion in my own head of Zamir White versus Zach Moss.
At that point, I think that you just have to go, if Jacobs is actually out, that you would just have to pray that all of the volume goes to Zamir White and take your chances that way.
Just pray. But Abdullah could get all the passing game work.
He could, and he probably will, but they're playing the Chargers, who score 0 points a game.
Especially now with Easton Stick.
Yeah.
I don't know, the backup quarterbacks. I mean, we just had the two jabronis on Thursday Night Football finish as QB1s this week.
Did Trubisky end up finishing as a QB1?
I'm pretty sure he didn't fall out. He scored over 20 points, which I still can't believe happened, that he got to 20 points in that game. I think he still finished. I'll check right now. You start talking about the next thing.
He was running back 8 for the week.
QB8?
Yeah, Zappy was 7, Trubisky was 8. Trubisky finished ahead of Josh
They didn't
Allen.
even fall out of some of the top 10?
Yeah, so Trubisky beat Josh Allen by fractional points, Flacco by fractional points, Baker by fractional points, Zach Wilson by fractional points. Dak finished like QB 14 somehow, and he played. It's funny because he played a great real life game. The fantasy production just wasn't there.
Maybe we can we get Jordan? We got Jordan Love and Tua. I don't know. Never mind. DeVito and Levis.
Levis is the answer there. Levis is going to throw like 4 touchdowns. They're going to lose 70-40 or something. They're going to be down 60 to nothing, and then it's just going to be bombs away for Moonraker.
Can I ask you a complete sidebar that I asked on my show? Do you think this year is anomalous, or that we should consider maybe Superflex isn't that great for 12-team leagues?
It gives more options, and I think that's what people like about it.
I do too. It's just in a year like this. I mean, this is again. I do think it's anomalous how many quarterbacks we've lost. But in a year like this, it's almost, if you're in a Superflex and you have 2 QB1s that are still alive, you're basically getting a championship. And then you could be walking in, you just lost Herbert after losing Burrow a few weeks. I'm just pointing out, like, I could see the argument where 10 teams, it makes a lot of sense still, but I could see people getting a sour taste in their mouth if this was the first year they tried it.
No, because I think now you have to amend your strategy, where if someone gets put into concussion protocol, all of a sudden that, they're probably not going to play the following week. So you have to keep these things in mind, that you have to start leaving some backups. You have to allocate some bench space to backup quarterbacks and just hold them for the year. And just hopefully that works out for you. Like, who would have thought Jake Browning would be the number 4 quarterback this week? Not me.
Not me either. Who thought we'd talk about Easton Stick starting this week and not wanting to use him? But I will say that would be my one argument if you want to still keep doing it, is like open up your bench a little bit more. Like, don't keep it only 5 or 6.
So Brian Robinson at 21, he might not play. I think that's a good spot for him. They're my rankings. That's where I put him. So obviously I think it's a good spot. It's not the greatest matchup in the world, but it's fine. He can figure out what to do here. Let's say he sits, though. How do you see the Commanders' backfield shaking out against the Rams? And where would Gibson fall? Would you just insert Gibson at 21, knowing that all of the receiving game work is likely his, and then he'll probably end up with like 10 carries on the ground?
So maybe even a spot or 2 higher. I'll just compare it. It's the Chiefs, but it's I was about to say it might not be the Chiefs offense, but as of late, kind of is the Chiefs offense. Gibson was already usable as an RB3 and half and full point PPR. So he's McKinnon. He's going to see an uptick. It's not going to be the amount that Rodriguez sees an uptick, going from barely anything to half the share. But I think it's going to be very much half-half. You're going to see Gibson in the McKinnon role, and you're going to see that Rodriguez is the Clyde Edwards-Helaire role. And in those scenarios, as we always talk about on your show, pass catcher, and you might even get some goal line work from Gibson. So I would put him like basically where you have McKinnon. I would almost swap McKinnon, like McKinnon out if like Pacheco plays, like that 24 spot in front of the Walker situation. I think is a good spot for Gibson if there is no Brian Robinson.
I was surprised at how much receiving game work Walker saw over Charbonnet yesterday. Really was. It's just circumstantial.
I mean, I don't know if it's circumstantial. It was the reports were that he was the starter, and they kind of leaned in that fashion, which made me like, I watched, and so when I saw that happening in the beginning of the game, I was like, okay, maybe Charbonnet's not 100%. Maybe Walker's healthier of the two. But Charbonnet didn't look like he was really limited in that game. So I'm not going to put too much stock to those. This is one of those situations where we sometimes have these one-off games that just don't make sense on paper. I mean, the Houston Texans can't figure out what the hell they want to do any given week. And I'm not comparing Singletary and Pierce to that. But, it's kind of that chasing the tail situation. For this, it was a little weird. We know Walker is decent in the pass game. I want to put too much stock into it. But Seattle this week, where you have them, I think is fair given the risk of their health and their use.
And the matchup going against Philly, which, although the pass defense, not very good, the run defense, still quite good. It's same as the Philly backfield situation. Like, maybe it's a spot where do they still have Rashad Penny on the practice squad? Just activate him for a revenge game.
Get that revenge game. I mean, we got the DeMarcus Robinson revenge game this week. So, yeah, we headed into this game the entire week of we got to run more, and then they didn't.
Yeah,
I know part of that was game script, but I mean, they didn't even seem to want to try that much at the beginning.
So there are two guys, Jerome Ford and Chuba Hubbard at 27 and 28, who continue to see a ton of work. Ford is still splitting on the ground with Kareem Hunt, but he's seeing by far the higher receiving game work with Joe Flacco under center. So that continues to prop him up. Not the greatest matchup against now I'm just completely spacing. Against the Bears. The Bears have one of the better run defenses in football right now, so you're still banking really on his passing game work and that he doesn't get vultured near the goal line, hence why he's down a little bit. And Hubbard can get 400 carries a game, and they're kind of useless.
They are. In this case, I would actually lean Hubbard, mostly because I know he kept playing, but then he got x-rays after the game. Jerome Ford, that's why in my waiver column, I'm like, is he hurt? Question mark. Because he played through it and he was grimacing, but they sent him for x-rays last night. I don't think we've seen it. I even just checked while we were doing this. Haven't seen any follow-up from it, so I'm assuming he's okay. But given that their wrist and it's just kind of iffy, you might just get a little worrisome. It's the matchup, iffy wrist. And then just what if the iffy wrist affects his receiving game? So I would go Hubbard over him. I would actually, if there is no Aaron Jones, I would go A.J. Dillon, as much as I don't like A.J. Dillon over him, just because of that little added risk. I would slide him down a spot or two. Also because Kareem Hunt can do things in the passing game, so it's kind of why I forced the issue. Again, I'm prefacing that all with Jerome Ford maybe misses practice on Wednesday and they say the wrist is bothering him a little bit. If Jerome Ford's 100% practicing, you know me, I've loved some Jerome Ford this year. Even against the Bears, I think that you could argue he could be higher because you don't have to deal with the split like Ken was. You know what? If it was my team, I'd play Ford, even in the bad matchup. I've been mentioning how bad the Bears run defense is as a matchup problem. But Ford, with the workload that he gets versus Ken Walker, both in bad matchups, I would actually go Ford.
Okay, so I'll just drop down Kenneth Walker then into that range. The other one with the bad matchup is Donta Foreman, who's the lead in the Bears' backfield. That's not Justin Fields, but it's also just a terrible matchup against the Browns.
It is, and I pulled that up looking at the game just to double check. We knew he was the lead. It was a stark lead. 72% of the touches. Roschon was actually second in snaps and third in touches, and Herbert was second in touches and third in snaps.
Hey, as someone who bet the under of Khalil Herbert carries of 6.5, I was very happy to see that. That's actually how it shook out.
I'm with you. We sat here last past week, and I said in All in Football too that I would say, why go away? Deonta Foreman was the one that was working. I wasn't expecting it to be that big of a stark difference. I mean, we're talking about 3 carries and 1 carry between those, but I mean, again, bad matchup, and it's still at what it was, 15 total touches for Foreman, and it's just kind of in a bad matchup. It's just, I'm okay where you have him.
Reminder to everyone out there right now, there is still time to get in on a very easy Christmas gift at omahasteaks.com, but you want to put in your order very soon so it shows up by Christmas. It's perfect. You can do it from your phone. You can do it while you're listening to this podcast and use code MAYO for an extra $30 off the already 50% off site-wide deal going on at omahasteaks.com right now. So go hit that up. You can get more details down in the description of the video and pod as we speak. Last thing that I want to put out to you, let's say Josh Jacobs plays on Thursday night. Where would you rank him?
I'm looking, behind Ford.
Oh, really? You'd have him that low? I would actually gamble, if they're bringing him back to play, because they're essentially out of it, that there's no reason to bring him back.
That's why I don't trust what it might mean. This is one where I go back to what I said before. I don't know what this means, though, because they have nothing to play for. So, yeah, you're not signing him to a contract next year. Just be whatever, what the hell? We don't even care anymore. I don't know. I don't know that I could trust him on Thursday. He barely walked off that field. Let's just go with the assumption he's not playing. there was reports that it was his knee, his ankle. Nobody could get it right, and it does sound like it is actually the knee. But man, there's so many people I would not want to sit him for. I just don't trust it. Sorry, maybe I'm wrong in that, but I would go Ford. I would go Ford before I went Jacobs this week.
All right. Let's move to wide receiver. Check out the injury report. We got Christian Watson. He's out for Monday Night Football. I have him out of the rankings for week 15, too. It's the second time he's injured his hamstring this year. Hamstrings tend to be a while out. I have Jefferson in the rankings with his chest injury. He might not play, so we can talk through that situation. But if he plays, you play him, although it didn't really work out last week because he got hurt again. Nico Collins, I do not have in with his calf injury. That's a multi-week injury most of the time. Tutu Atwell with his concussion is not in the rankings. I mean, no one really cares about Matt Collins anyway. I do not have Shaheed in the rankings. I do have Pop Douglas, Super DeMario in the rankings. Palmer is back in the rankings for this week. We'll see how much he goes. And Hollywood Brown and Michael Wilson, I have both back in the rankings coming off the bye week for the Washington Commanders. So we go to the rankings. We can fly through the very top because you know who you're playing. In those circumstances, Tyreek, CeeDee, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Ayuk, Debo, Diggs, Pittman, Devonta Smith, Cooper Kupp gets his jolt back up the rankings. It was really nice to see. Good game from all those guys. DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Puka, Olave, Waddle, DK, even though he got ejected, you can still play him the next week. Cortland Sutton, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, even with Easton Stick, Zay Flowers, Jamar Chase, Drake London, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, Brendan Cooks, Rashee Rice, Garrett Wilson. And then I think that we're into like the real discussion now because who knows with Ridley and Jones. I have them back to back at 29 and 30. They both just saw a boatload of targets. It was a very difficult matchup. And Trevi's essentially playing on one leg. So he should be a little bit better this week, although the matchup is still not great. It's probably actually even worse. So you can still have 14 targets and do absolutely nothing with them. But I think that down to Garrett Wilson, that's like my trust line tier of all those guys. Like Cooks and Hopkins are pretty reliable at this point. I'm not saying they're going to have a great game, but more often than not, they are having great games at this point. And then you get into that Ridley Jones, Deontay Johnson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Terry McLaurin, Hollywood Brown, Noah Brown, with Davis Mills probably playing quarterback, T. Higgins, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, Adam Thielen. That guy just took a complete drop off. Demarcus Robinson, your guy at 41 in a revenge situation. So I think that's like the next tier of we don't necessarily have to have like a real hard debate on a lot of these guys, but I do think that this is the range where people are gonna have their start sit questions.
And I can definitely see that. Yeah, that's where you're going to have to make a decision of what you want to do this week. Calvin Ridley, I'm okay with. To go back up, I would put Jamar Chase higher. I know it was a down game for this week, but it's still the receiving rate for anybody on that team with that kind of receptions. It's just he didn't go to Jamar Chase as much as he did with the week before, but that's nitpicky.
How far up would you move Chase then? Like, would you put him ahead of Olave?
No, I would actually probably stop right there. I was going to say definitively over Devontae Adams with his situation. Cortland Sutton, he's kind of your Derrick Henry argument. All he does is score touchdowns, but he still only scores like 13 points every single week.
Tambo and I actually had that discussion on the DraftKings show about, because he was in that $6,000 range, and he was like, yeah, Cortland Sutton's pretty good. I was like, yeah, Cortland Sutton is pretty good. And then we started looking at the game logs, like the dude has scored in like 7 of 8 games and has yet to score over 20 fantasy points. So that's not great.
I know.
What happens if he doesn't catch a touchdown? You're screwed. But he catches
exactly.
If anyone's going to score a touchdown on Denver at this point, it is Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, he had one call back too. So I think that's a fair spot because we're already talking risks in those situations. I think you can make the argument for Zay Flowers over him, which what we saw last week is that as this has started to come together with that bye and now people getting healthy, Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham are definitively the 1-2. Which I went down and I was trying to find where he had Odell Beckham, wherever he is. Where the hell is he?
I had him at 52. Like, would you play him over Demarcus Robinson?
Way up, yeah, way up.
Okay, would you play him over Noah Brown?
Yes.
Would you play him over Terry McLaurin?
No, I was gonna say I would play him over Marquise Brown, but I would stop there. He has double digits in every single one of his games for the last 5 weeks, except the one he left that he got banged up in. He's now granted, if you look at the games, it's very much Cortland Sutton like. It's like 12, 15, 13, 17. Like it's all like within that double digit teens, but he and Zay Flowers are the guys that they're just getting funneled to. It was a nice game, but that was also, I was going to say for Isaiah Likely, that also had to do with the fact that tight ends just destroy the Rams. So I would play him higher. I think he has to be in that conversation. Going back up to Calvin Ridley. I'm okay with Calvin Ridley there. I would slide down Zay Jones, and I'm not saying I would do it. I'm just saying, you know what? I wouldn't put Parker Washington there, but I would play Washington over Zay Jones given this matchup, because what do we see in that game? You just obliterate the Ravens if you can, similar to we talked about it last week. We talked about when we had the Puka Nacua versus Cooper Kupp situation. And we weren't sure about Cooper Kupp's health last Monday. And then we talked about it facing the Eagles too. You just beat them up after the catch and yards over the middle of the field. The yards per route run for both of those guys before the catch versus after the catch, they were, I was trying to pull it up to do it. Oh, it loaded while I was doing it. 48% of Cooper Kupp's yards were after the catch. 37% of Nakua's was after the catch. The only one that wasn't was Demarcus Robinson, and granted he hit that big play, but that just kind of, things will happen. I'm not banking on that for Zay Flowers. So I would move Zay Flowers down into like the DeMario range, but I would pull Parker Washington also up into that conversation.
All right, where do you want to move Parker Washington to? Do you want to move him?
I would start him before Zay Jones.
Okay, so I move Zay Jones behind Curtis Samuel. Would I just put him in at number 40, play Curtis Samuel over Parker Washington, then have Zay Jones directly behind him? I mean, it's not like Zay Jones didn't see 14 targets yesterday.
I know. I think that was also scenario wise. And again, this is
why is that scenario going to be overly different this week?
Because you pepper underneath and you want to get the ball out faster. You do not want to be standing in that pocket against the Ravens, especially Trevor Lawrence's ankle. I'm just saying, if they're going to have any success, it's going to have to be bang, 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 bang.
Okay, so how far then would you drop Zay Jones? Is 41 too high? Should he go behind Josh Downs?
I think he's in the Gabe Davis conversation. You might get 0. You might get 15. And what did we get last week? A big fat 0 from Gabe Davis.
I can't believe he had 0. I guess he used all of his touchdowns in that playoff game against the Chiefs. He can no longer score any fantasy points against them.
The weird thing is you sent me down a rabbit hole, and you weren't wrong. It wasn't just the Chiefs. He's got double the touchdown rate against man coverage, and the Chiefs are a top 6 team in running out man coverage. So it made sense that it should hit.
Sometimes it doesn't.
No, clearly.
Games played on the field, not on paper.
I know.
The Chiefs actually did a really
even have jobs.
The Chiefs did a really good job at the line of scrimmage because they kept trying to force the ball into Diggs on bubble screens. Like they locked down Diggs. They just decided to let James Cook run free out of the backfield and just on seam routes get annihilated down the middle.
Yeah, so do you think they adjust for that, or do you think that's something that Zeke or a random person that Belichick picks out this week starts doing?
No, see, I don't think so, because I think that the game plan for the Chiefs was like, we cannot let Diggs and Davis beat us deep. Like, we just need to throw all the bodies we have. If someone else beats us, someone else beats us. And that's what happened.
Yeah, so do you think this is reverse of like, we got to get our crap together, 2 losses in a row, and they're just going to say, you know what? You know who can't beat us? Bailey Zappi, so let's just destroy the backfield and let him try to throw.
Yeah.
And then maybe Zeke's too high. Just to go backwards to the running backs. Just thinking through it as you're pointing it out.
Maybe, but, I mean, listen, he still might end up with like 8 blood dumps if they just try to do that. Like, I don't expect Zeke to do much on the ground, but he kind of needs to be where he is because of A, the workload, B, the receiving game, and if they do get inside the 5-yard line, it's going to be 3 runs to Ezekiel Elliott.
It's true.
So you just kind of have to play the volume on. Yeah, you have to play the volume on that one. I think, at least with Zeke, even though the matchup's not great.
Yeah. Okay.
But like, I don't expect like Pop Douglas or Juju, or even if Devontae Parker comes back, to really do much here.
I was gonna say nitpicky, but I would drop Thielen down. Even though first game back, I would go Demario Douglas before I started Thielen at this point. And I think he needs to be in the conversation. Josh Downs, another quietish game. He's kind of like falling off just as Gardner Minshew is spreading the ball. Especially, you know what? I would still play Thielen over Josh Downs if Jonathan Taylor is back, because I just think that takes even more away from why do they need to throw.
Okay. What did Thielen do?
Thielen down 2 spots.
Thielen was 5 for 74 on 7 targets. Like, it's not like he had a terrible game.
That's almost like that's a good game for him now.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty good game for most people. He was a top 30 guy last week.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not going to put that into Quentin Johnston's 1 catch with Easton Stick. I mean, I know he had 3 for whatever, but like all those yards came on that 1 play.
Yeah, I would rather play Adam Thielen than play Quentin Johnson.
Oh, I just meant like these guys down here.
Yeah,
I
but
think
I
you
mean,
could even argue.
argue what?
What is the? I was gonna say. Who's running the most out of the slot? Is it still Smith and Jigba? I was gonna say you might be able to argue. I would potentially argue for Smith and Jigba over Thielen and Demarcus Robinson.
I don't know about that.
He's still getting all the slot work.
That's
It's still
great.
a massive amount.
That's
of
great.
slot work.
The guy just doesn't do anything.
He led the team in team targets last week.
That's great because their top receiver got ejected.
He already scored a touchdown at that point, though.
That's true. He did score the touchdown. Let's see. Yeah, he was.
I'm saying we're in the conversation of you said people need to make these decisions. I'm just telling you, like, you know what it comes down to? It comes down to, I wanted to bring this up real quick when we were talking about the running back injuries before to couple into this. To go back to, we were talking, there was some running back we finished the discussion with, and I was going to say, Jerome Ford. On the Thursday night situation, don't wait if you don't have a backup plan. Like everybody who kept saying, I think I could wait for Aaron Jones. Do not wait for Aaron Jones because now he's out. And this is a perfect example. I wanted to say, don't wait without a backup plan. In this scenario, this is another thing you and I talk about for years. Gabe Davis is your 0 or your 20. If you just want to say, my team is stout, I'm the first seed or second seed, then I would actually play Smith and Jigba because he's guaranteed to get you points. Gabe Davis is not.
Agreed. But even if it's me in a closer matchup, I'd still roll for the upside of Gabe Davis. Like, what's really the 8 points going to do me? I need a guy who might score 25.
I think Gabe Davis has 3 good games this year?
Yeah, I want one
this year.
Maybe it's number 4. I mean, how many good games has Jackson Smith and Jigba had? 1?
No, he's got more than you that usable. He's been a wide receiver 3 or 4 at least 5 times.
Oh, great. A wide receiver 4.
Again, that's his ceiling.
That sounds like my team didn't make the playoffs.
He's your probably 4th wide receiver. You're not starting Smith and Jigba like top 2.
Correct. I mean, if you are, you're definitely not in the playoffs. Any more receivers?
That is true.
Any more receivers you think we should bring up here?
No, I like Jordan Addison until that quarterback situation went to crap.
Well, the quarterback situation is solved now. They have Nick Mullins, who rules.
Just go to Jaron Hall. Why are we doing this?
Because Nick Mullins rules, man. Nick Mullins is good.
No, he's not.
Oh, he's very good.
Not at all.
If he was on the
Not
49ers, he might be the MVP of the league.
I will point out, as of right now, because you don't have Christian Watson, the one that you might want to move up your ranks depending on what happens tonight, I have some hope for Dontavian Wicks. Yep.
Yeah, but where do you move him up to?
If he hits tonight against the Giants, because I think there's a chance that he pushes into a top 3 role and even starts kind of top 3 in the fact that all 3 of them even out and snap. Like, obviously, they're not always going to be 3 wide. But I'm saying where their snap percentages are very close, kind of like, who was it earlier this year where, the third option? Oh, the Texans. Whereas, earlier this year, the Texans option was sure, he's the third option, but he's only 5 fewer snaps. If that happens, because I think Wicks has number 1 ability more so than actually even Dobbs or Reed has, I think you could be talking about Wicks in the conversation with Jacoby Myers. If Wicks looks like what I hope he can be, obviously this is going to potentially depend on what happens against the Giants. They might not even use him that much. But if he looks good and he's used that much, I would play him over Robert Woods. It's going to be Robert Woods and John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson, and I don't trust any of those after Noah Brown. So I put it that way. If Wicks hits tonight, I want to put Wicks 1 spot in front of Woods.
Okay. So you can check the updated rankings for that on DraftKings Network, or just hit the link down in the description right now in order to do that. Let's talk through some more injuries, this time at tight end. Darren Waller doesn't look like he's going to be a go for Monday Night Football, but may return in a week's time. Ian Thomas exited the game. Not that anyone cares about that for the Carolina Panthers. Schultz, Hurst, Higbee, and Taysom Hill all missed week 14. I would expect Taysom Hill to be back for week 15. Hayden Hurst seems like his concussions are severe, so I don't think he's going to be back the rest of the season. Yeah, he's done. Higbee, no idea. Maybe on Higbee. I don't have him in the rankings right now. I do have Schultz in, but Davis Mills is most likely to be starting at quarterback right now. Do you think that we see Dalton Schultz?
I think they might try and get him out there given their wide receiver situation, especially if there's no Nico Collins, just to get more options. They still have playoff aspirations. They are in the playoff mix right now. So if he's out there, I just don't know if he's going to be 100%.
So I probably need to boost him down in the rankings then. For the rankings, I go Kelsey, Hawkinson, McBride, Njoku, Ingram, Dalton Schultz at 6. Should he be that high, or should I have him at 12, in the Freiermuth range?
Freiermuth range, I would play Taysom Hill over.
Okay, so would you play Kincaid or Dalton Schultz?
Kincaid got the work. He just didn't get the receptions and yards, even with Knox back. Against Dallas, I think that's enough risk that I would kind of put him in that conversation right there.
All right, I'll put Schultz. I mean, again, it's not Stroud throwing to Dalton Schultz more than in this iteration of the rankings.
Right.
If Schultz is activated and CJ Stroud is playing, I would boost him up because he's probably the number one target at that point.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
All right. Yeah, there's not really much to do. Like, you probably have your tight end at this point. Like, if you have to stream someone, Freiermuth, Otten, or usually the two. Like, I'm not really in on maybe Goddard gets it going, but he was clearly limited on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, it clearly wasn't 100%. Hey, Logan Thomas against the Rams.
Yeah.
Throw your tight ends against the Rams. Hey, you said if you're streaming, if you're desperate.
Yeah, if you're streaming, I guess. Tanner Hudson seems to have some sort of connection with Jake Browning. We've seen this a few times when backups come in, that guys that they're familiar with passing to as a part of the second team offense, once those guys get elevated a little bit, like he's very clearly the top tight end for the Bengals now. I don't know how much that's going to mean when all is said and done, but he is getting a lot of work over Irv Smith and over Drew Sample.
Yeah, he would be. I'd play him like in PPR just because of the Browning completion percentage. And like, you might get 5 for 30. Like, it might not even be like a 10 yards a catch.
I suppose I could bump up Jake Ferguson, but that's so hit or miss, right?
That when you just said, I was gonna say, yeah, but he's like top 8 or 22.
Yeah,
he's just back and forth and back and forth.
Maybe. I mean, where do you put Waller in this situation? I have him at 15. Tyrod might be back next week. Who knows? Not that I think they'll play. They'll probably play DeVito. Tommy Cutlets rest of the year.
Tommy Cutlets the rest of the year. I think where you have him is a fair spot. It's not like he was going off before he got hurt either. So the big thing was that.
Remember when he caught like 5 passes in a row in the preseason and people were like, it is time for Darren Waller.
Darren Waller number 2.
Nat.
Tyrod liked him better than Daniel Jones. We have no idea what that means with DeVito, so that's up in the air. You see, that's the thing. If you told me Tyrod starting in week 15 and Darren Waller's back, I'd be like, I would play him over Pitts with his second touchdown. Congratulations. I'd probably play him over Freiermuth with Trubisky, but that would probably be where I stop, and that's only if it's Tyrod, because it's DeVito. We just don't know what kind of connection DeVito has with Waller, if he's even going to throw to him that much.
I have Davis Allen at 24. Should I put him up?
Over Gerald Everett.
Like, should I have him, Conklin, Kraft? Like, should I bump all those guys up, or are they just non-factors?
They're kind of non-factors. I'd play him over Henry. I know Henry just had his 2 touchdown game, but it's just Henry's been mostly non-existent. And they were down to Juju Smith-Schuster and Henry in that game. I actually had a touchdown prop on that one. Should have went for the 2 for Hunter Henry because of that, because they had nobody else in that game.
I'll put Henry behind Kraft at 26. If we're talking about 20s at the tight end rankings, we're probably good to go, I think.
You're still watching the show because you're playing like a 16-team league and everybody made the playoffs.
Yeah. Quarterbacks. The injuries are going to be the real thing here. So CJ Stroud I do not have in because of the concussion. Herbert is out for Monday Night Football, so Easton Stick is starting. Geno, I think I put him back in. I can't remember at this point. We'll see. Not that I really care that much about Geno. Kenny Pickett.
You did.
I do have Geno in. Okay. Kenny Pickett out for week 15. Doesn't seem like he's going to be coming back for a bit right now. Once again, you can find all of this. It always gets updated in the newsletter until I release a new newsletter, and then it gets updated at the top of that one each time as well. So for the quarterback rankings, I have Dak, Josh Allen, Purdy, Hurts, Lamar, Mahomes, Love, Stafford, Tua, and Sam Howell. It's not a great matchup for Tua, but it's better than playing in New York because they're playing in Miami. Then I have Fields, Flacco, Ritter, Goff, Kyler, Trevi, Wilson, Jake Browning, Geno Smith, and Gardner Minshew. I should have Nick Mullins at number 1.
You go ahead and do it. You're bat crap crazy, man. I'm just trying to see, like, normally I have somebody that I'm like, yeah, you know what, I would do this, and I'm just looking, and I would play, wow. I don't know that I can change it. I play Stafford over, I was going to say, let's play Stafford over Jordan Love, but Jordan Love's got Tampa Bay, too.
Exactly.
So I'd just be nitpicking of all nitpicks.
Like,
I don't even want to mess with your rankings.
Fields is the tough one because they're at Cleveland.
At Cleveland.
Yeah. So it's not a great matchup, but just the amount that he's run since he's come back from injury just kind of gives you such a good floor that maybe, they send the house at him or Garrett's in his face. He just shakes one guy. And we've seen with Cleveland that they give up huge plays on the regular. Like it's just stuff, huge play. If someone's going to break the big play in this game, it's probably Justin Fields.
It probably is. You're not wrong there. Here, I do have one.
Okay.
I know he's at home, and it's not the best matchup, but I play golf over Ritter. Ritter doesn't have a good matchup. Carolina's defense is it's been quietly good since the middle of the season, especially against the pass.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm playing.
Ritter went bananas this week, by the way.
I know. I built around 3 quarterbacks this week on DraftKings. It was Ritter, Purdy, and Fields. And it really worked out for me. They had 3 good weeks.
I didn't have the Ritter. I give you kudos on that one. I went the Purdy and Fields, and not the Ritter.
Well, I played Zach Moss and Drake London in every lineup that I played, so I just started building backwards from there.
See, I went Zach Moss and Joe Mixon. I had a few Drakes, but the Zach Moss killed what could have been good for both of us in so many situations. That was just. By the way, Ritter could have even been better if he didn't sail it over. Why did he fire that pass so hard at Bijan on that 3rd down at the beginning of the game?
What? He's not good. That's the reason.
I know, I get that.
Like Carlton Davis,
it was so frustrating.
Carlton Davis jumped this route to Bijan, and it was clearly like Todd Bowles in like leading up to the week were like, hey, when Ritter does this is 100% the play because there's no second option with Ritter. Like he just stares at Bijan and he's going to throw a laser at him. And you see Davis, he stops. Like Ritter takes maybe 2 steps, like drops 2 steps back from under center. And Davis gives up on whoever the hell he's covering, just sprints at Bijan, and boom, he's there. It was insane. Like that, you can only do that through good coaching. Or do you have the best instincts in the world?
I watched the entire play in my head, as you said, because I relived all of it. You're not wrong.
It was just kind of crazy to think about. All right, so let's move to defenses then. Again, you can find these up on DraftKings Network. We got Kansas City at number 1 against the Patriots, Miami, San Francisco, Cleveland, Atlanta, Vegas, Dallas, Minnesota, Cincinnati, Baltimore, there's the top 10. Then we got some Indy in our lives. Chicago Bears against Joe Flacco. The Jets, Pittsburgh, New Orleans, Green Bay, the Rams, Tennessee, Detroit, the Chargers on Thursday Night Football. It's Denver against Detroit because Goff just wants to give people the ball at this point. But it's a week where there's not like any lock great options, but there's myriad good options, especially ones you can pick up.
Yeah, so I looked out for the rest of the year. I'm glad you brought up Denver because I don't like Denver a lot this week. But I looked at 15, 16, 17. I think they're a great pickup if you have the spot now because next week they get New England and then the final week they get the Chargers with Easton Stick. So I think Denver's a really smart stash if you've been streaming defenses. The only one that I would like, I know what you're doing with the Raiders, but they don't get a ton of pressure that I would still play Baltimore before them. I would slide them down to 10, but not that far.
Yeah, okay, I can get behind that. Just with Max Crosby and Easton Stick, just that sounds like a recipe.
I get it. That's what I'm saying. I see where you're going with it. And did you see those insane numbers, by the way? The difference of when they run plays to the left versus the right against the Raiders of how ridiculously successful and unsuccessful it is.
I did not see that. Enlighten me.
It's like quite like they get sacks and runs are almost a half per carry when you run at Crosby versus the other side. And then the pressure rate when they have the cover or the pass protection on the side, the sacks are everything almost doubles on Max Crosby's side, basically. So that's why I don't hate it, but I think the Chargers, I'm going to say smart enough to like try to stay away from that side and just maybe don't get Easton Stick killed. That's why I'm saying, like, I would still play Ravens because you brought it up. Trevor Lawrence, ankle, throwing some picks late this year too has been a little bit more iffy even before the ankle. So that's why I would slide him down there, but I still think they're an interesting streaming option. I do like it. I do like the call.
All right. That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Once again, the rankings will get updated every day, as will the injuries. Jake, do you have a different schedule for fantasy playoff time, or is it same old?
Same old. I do the thing you don't. I run all the way through week 18. I even have the week 18. Wait, I don't do waivers. I just couple it into rank. At least I don't do waivers that week because who are you picking up? You're picking up people you're starting. So just get the rankings out. But until week 17, everything is the exact same. Waivers midnight, ranks midnight Tuesday, podcast like normal, and then we switch things up.
You can follow Jake on Twitter @AllenKid and check out all of his work at The Athletic Thank you all for watching. Smash the like on the way out. Sub to Mayo Media Network and play in those DraftKings Listeners Leagues. All right? Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!